Hello, Sean Hess here with Hess Motorsports. Going to show you today how to install our weld-in frame certs on the back of a CanAm X3. This is a 2019 X3 Turbo. As you can see here, we've already removed all of our stock components to get them out of our way. You can do that, refer to your factory service manual and get all that stuff removed. We've supported the vehicle with a jack stand, with 2 jack stands to make it nice and stable so that we're confident in working back here. Once we got all the stock components out of the way, you'll be left with studs sticking out of the back of your frame. One of the reasons we're doing this project here is you're probably familiar with the back of these studs. They're always working themselves loose as the suspension moves up and down the car. They're constantly moving and they're not staying tight. A lot of people say it causes sort of a loose feel in the rear end of the car. So what we're going to do here not only is going to eliminate that loose feel, but it's also going to strengthen up the back of your car as well as give you a rigid, solid mount to your suspension. So, like I said, the first thing, once you have everything out of the way, you're going to have studs here. Now you can remove those with a side grinder, a Sawzall, whatever you've got that you can feel free and cut those off. They're so long to keep from having to remove the transmission or the motor out of the car. We just cut them off and push them back and cut them off, push back, and then finally you can get the piece out. So we've already cut these off to keep the video condensed. And we've also, to install our cert, you will have to drill the existing hole out to a 3/4 inch diameter or 0.75 inches diameter hole. You do not want to oversize that hole. You want to drill it straight through. We recommend putting a piece of wood or a piece of metal plate or anything you've got behind there to keep from poking through and hitting the back of your transmission or your differential. It's just for protection. Whatever you got lying around, we've used a little piece of aluminum, we've used wood, whatever you've got lying around to keep you from just poking through. But again, you want to take your 3/4 inch drill and drill out the 6 factory locations that are left once you remove the studs. We're going to install these weld-in certs in the back of this car. The first thing you want to do after you have your 3/4 inch holes drilled, and again, don't oversize those holes, is test fit your plate. Make sure it fits good and snug. So once you test fit your plate to the car, what I recommend doing is we use a silver Sharpie. You can do it with a black Sharpie. It's just a little bit harder to see, but for video sakes, we're going to use a silver. And you can MIG or TIG weld this, whichever your preference is. Some people like TIG welding, some people like MIG welding. Whatever you're comfortable with or your local fabricator can do. But basically, we're going to want to put a weld in the center across here, and then we're going to want to weld around the outer edges. So we're just marking this. The reason we're marking this is so we can see how much of the paint to remove on the back side of our plate so we can get a good weld. So like that one there, like I said, we recommend welding top center, bottom center, and then your 2 sides. And basically when I remove this, I'll see where I need to remove the paint from my weld. And you're going to want to repeat that on your middle and bottom as well. And as you can see, I've got all 3 of them marked, and that's strictly just to kind of give me an idea where I need to take the paint away. I'm going to let the paint behind here on the frame because I don't want, without welding it solid, I don't want rust coming out. Now, our parts, these are actually raw. When you get them in the package, they will be black oxided, so they won't rust, and you can weld on black oxide. You'll still want to paint over it once you're done, but they won't be rusting in the package or anything like that, and they'll be treated on the back side so you don't have to worry about rust coming down through there if you don't weld it solid. Now for the R's for today, we actually took and primered the back side of them with a copper weld through primer basically, and we just did that because these aren't coated like the ones will be that you'll get with your kit. But we just did that because we pulled these right off the machine and we wanted to get a video out to you guys. So we already primered this. So now we're going to go ahead and get our grinder and buzz the paint off in these areas and get ready to weld these on. Okay, so now after you grind this, we had a little bit of water problem in our air lines, and so humid today. But grinding off minimal amount as possible where we marked it. You can see what we did here. We're going to come back in and install our plates simply by pressing them in by hand. And this one, if you run into one that's a little bit snug, just kind of tap it in if you need to. It ain't gonna hurt nothing. It won't hurt anything to tap it in. Just make sure you got it good and flush. I got a dead blow hammer here. And that's one reason why we say don't oversize the holes, because it'll fit good and tight everywhere. But now that we've got those all tapped in, what we're gonna do is we send, along with sending new bolts with the product, we also send, you'll see these big 6 aluminum spacers. That is so you can bolt your radius rod plate. You can use your stock radius rod plate, it's fine, or you can use ours. But you'll basically bolt your radius rod plate up to here and space it away. You'll bolt it up and space it away so you can get all this tacked in place before actually welding it. And what that does is it just keeps everything in the same plane, keeping it all true to each other like it was from factory. That way, you know, you don't have one of these twisted or something. Because if you just weld it right here and you just had a hole off a little bit, you'd find that your bolt could be very difficult to get started. So that's why we recommend you want to tack it in place with your radius rod plate. We're going to use our plate for the sake of the video. I would recommend using your stock radius rod plate, but we're going to show you that next. Blake's cutting the radius rod plate out. This is our Billet machined radius rod plate that he's opening right there, which features a toe point in the rear. It's a really nice setup, very strong. Adds strength to the rear of your car as well. Replaces the stock flimsy plate with a good, nice, heavy-duty billet one, and you get a toe loop to boot out of it. So we're going to basically put these up here and with the bolts and spacers and get them all in place. Our bolts that we send are a 16 millimeter head bolt. So you'll want to get that socket, so obviously you can get these all started in place, and you're just going to run them in by hand like so, or you can use a ratchet, whatever you got. We're going to get all these started. Got more bolts for me, Blake? And all these spacers are strictly for is to give you clearance to get your bolts all started, and to also get you where you can tack it in place without having any issues. Okay, so now what we've done is we've got them all ran up and tight, and like I said, the reason we do that is to keep everything in the same plane like it was from factory, and all that does is allows you to get in here and get some good tacks in. Some people would weld it with that in place. I don't recommend it. You don't want to burn up your rear radius rod plate. That is also why I recommend using the stock one. For this video, we're going to use our plate. But anyway, we're going to tack these in place now, and we'll get the welder prepped. We're going to wire weld these in. We're going to tack them up. Then once they're tacked, all 3 of them, we will remove the plate, get it out of the way, and weld them up. So now we got the welder set up. We're going to put some tacks on here. I recommend tacking both sides, obviously. Then we will remove the plate. Before you weld on the car, we recommend disconnecting the battery. It's just a good common practice when you're welding on anything, any kind of vehicle. It's just a good common practice. So go ahead and disconnect the battery so that you don't have to worry about anything shorting through. The other thing I also recommend is keep your ground close to where you're welding. Don't be welding on the back of the car with a ground in the front of the car, or vice versa, something like that, because, you know, obviously that can travel through the vehicle. So keep your ground close, disconnect your battery, and go ahead and tack. Most people that weld for a living on things know that already, but if you're at home doing it yourself, that's some things you want to watch out for. We're going to go ahead and get these tacked up. Now we've got it tacked, 2 spots on each plate, both sides. We're going to go ahead and unbolt this so we can weld it up solid on both sides of each plate, and then top and bottom of each plate. You can weld the thing up solid all the way around it if you want. It's not necessary. That's kind of personal preference, but you can do it. So we're going to go ahead and get this off and get it out of our way, and we'll get some good welds on here. So as you can see, I've removed my plate, but I also took the bolts that are supplied and I've ran them back in to the bottom of the thread. Now obviously don't hammer them in with a gun, just run them down until they bottom out. The reason we do that is so when you're welding, you don't get any splatter or anything, a BB down in the threads and mess the threads up with the cert. But that's another recommendation we do. So now that they're in there, I'm going to go ahead and weld these up solid. We'll remove them and then we will be ready to get all this bolted back up. So Terrell just come over and welded this up, and now we're going to remove our bolts so that we can wire brush and get ready to paint. Keep in mind these bolts are going to be very hot. Don't just grab them by your hand. Go ahead and either have a glove or use your cordless impact, take them out, just set them. Now, so we got the bolts out of the way, and now I'm just taking a wire wheel or something to knock off the excess paint that blisters away from the heat, just so we can get ready to paint it. Now, some people are going to have their cars all the way stripped down, doing a full build, and obviously we recommend doing this at that time. But if you're not, you know, the plate's going to cover pretty much all this up, so you're not going to see really any of it anyway. Just make sure you knock all the loose blistered paint off so that you can apply a new coat on there and basically just paint it up. Now that we've got all the welds cleaned up and buffed up and ready, we're going to prep it and get it ready for paint. We're probably going to run a tape line around and just paint this area. Some people might opt to paint the whole black back plate, but we're going to go ahead and just paint this area, basically what's behind our radius rod plate. That way it protects it from rusting. So now that we've got it prepped and we've taped it all off, we're going to shoot a little semi-flat black Krylon on it. We've kind of see the semi-flat or the satin black works pretty well. Again, you're really not going to see this. Your rear plate's going to be over it. So we're just going to hit the back end to mainly keep this from rusting and just give a little protection. You want to make sure your paint's really good and shook up. Just apply a nice even coat. So after you get some coverage on the front, be sure you also spray the backside where your cert comes in, and from welding you'll have a little bit of burn through. Go ahead and get something coated on it as well so it keeps from rusting.